So welcome back again. In this last lesson of this section, I'm actually going to show you how to draw a path between two locations, as well as how to draw some polygons like circles around some areas on the map. Now, to begin this application, I'm actually going to get started with the very first app that we had, the Maps application, simply because I don't want to do everything that was to do with the Google Developer Console and everything once again. So I'm going to head in here. I have this application, Maps application. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this one Draw Polylines app. And then I'm going to head into Android Studio. I'm going to start that application. Draw Polyline application, and then we're going to get started in this application. Basically, just as a quick refresher, in this application all we have is the map, and we have a map fragment, and then we make the map ready, and then obviously we can show it. Let me run that and show you on the emulator so we all know where we are with this application. So in this application, it basically shows us a map. It doesn't really do anything else. Now what I want to do is I actually want to go ahead and draw a path between, say, two locations. I'm going to come in here. Let me find the location. Let's actually go to Google Chrome and find the location, because it's obviously a lot easier over there. So I'm going to go to the maps.google.com, and in here I want to find a map that is, let's say between this location and the other location over there. So I'm going to copy both of these. So I'm going to say this is one of my locations. Let me just go back to my Android Studio. You don't really need to do any of this just yet. I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. So that's one location, and then let's say the other location is here, and this is the new value for it. Obviously these values are very, very sensitive, because a tiny change makes an entirely new location. That's why I need all the decimal values, so I know exactly where we are trying to go. So here in my map now I have these two locations. So I'm going to go ahead and say I have two values. Let's call one of them val. Let's call it start. That becomes lat long of these two values. So I'm going to copy one of these, and then I'm going to have another one, and I'm going to call this one end, and that's going to be those new values basically. And if you want to draw a polyline between two or many locations, all you have to do is you have to actually get your map. In this case it's called my map. So I'm going to get myself a little bit of a space. I'm going to say my map dot add a polyline, and when I want to add polyline, is actually asking me for polyline options. So I'm going to say polyline options. I'm going to basically initialize it, so polyline options. Then I'm going to have to add stuff such as whether it has to be clickable. I'm going to make it clickable, and then I'm going to say add. And here is the add. I'm going to have to add an array of all the locations that I have. So the locations that I have are only two of them, start and end. And that's basically going to add both of these locations to my polyline. And that's pretty much all I have to do if I just want to make a very basic polyline. Let's see what we get if we do that. I'm going to run this application again. I don't need this anymore. And I'm going to wait for my emulator to load up. And once it loads up, it's basically going to show us something in here. If I can actually find it, it's actually there. Good. So what I could do actually to see this a little bit easier, I could actually animate my camera to go somewhere around there so we could see it a little bit easier. So I'm going to say my map dot move camera, and let's do a camera update factory. In the update factory, we're going to go with the new lat long and zoom. Let's go to the start and at a zoom such as say 12f, so we can see everything clearly. And if we run the application now, we should be able to see our new location and the two places that we found. I think the places are a little bit off from what I had chosen, simply because I forgot to zoom my Google map to those locations. Let's go ahead and fix that and also get a few new locations. So I'm going to go to Chrome. In here, I'm going to say, let's say this is the start, and wherever I click, I'm actually going to go there. So that location basically becomes my location. So like that, and that location, now these values are the exact values for that location. So I'm going to copy the two of these. I'm going to go there and say, this is my start. That's good. Then I'm going to go ahead and say, let's say this location is whatever it is, this is going to be my next location. So this is the new values for it. So these are the two new values for it. Let's say I'm just going to copy this for a second, and then I'm going to go ahead and get one more, actually two more locations. So we have another location and the end. So this is the new one. Copy those values, and then finally I'm going to get, let's say here, I'm going to end in this location. What happened in here? Okay, let's say this place. All right, and here. These are the values for this final one. Good. So I'm going to copy these. I'm going to say one of them is actually called mid 1, and then the other one is called mid 2, and obviously they have their own values. And I could go ahead and say start mid 1, mid 2, and then the end. And now we have 4 locations to draw a polyline between them. Let's go ahead and run our application, and once my emulator loads up, we can see that those locations have been created. So that's the starting point with, you know, how you could actually draw a polyline. Now, there are a few things that we have to keep in mind. One of them is that if you want to draw a path between two, for instance, locations, and you want to move your camera, obviously you have to make a combination of this application and the previous application, which was about requesting locations. Now, that's one part of it. The other one is you obviously don't go ahead and manually add these locations. For instance, you can connect to the Google Paths API and get the exact path for 2 locations. They usually come as a JSON file, and then you can convert that JSON into so many locations and then show those in here. And then the last thing I want to show you is that how we could actually style our polyline. So if we have this polyline, I could actually convert it into a variable. Let's say I have a var, let's call it polyline, and that polyline becomes this one. And now I could do several things on it. For instance, I could go ahead and say polyline dot width. So I could decide how wide I want it to be. Let's say 8f. I could choose the color for it. So polyline dot color. I could have it to be color if it does show up. Color, let's say that blue, as well as many other styles that you can use. For instance, you can change the starter cap or end cap or join type or anything of the sorts. I'm not really interested in any of those right now. What I do want to change is I want to know what happens if I actually click on one of these polylines. Basically, if you remember here, we made it clickable. We said my map, add polyline, and within the options we said it is clickable. So I want to know what happens if we do click on it. So let's go ahead in here and say on my map, I'm going to say set on Polyline ClickListener. So what happens when we click on it? And you could actually do it like this. You could set the click listener in here. You could get a polygon and click on it, or you can make this activity a listener for it. So I'm going to do it with the latter option. I'm going to say this activity has to be the listener for it. And if that's the case, then you obviously have to make this activity extend to that. And that is basically called on Polyline Click Listener. So Google Map dot on Polyline Click Listener. And if we do that, then it's going to ask us to implement a new function. That function is going to be on Polyline clicked. So let's add that. Let me collapse some stuff that we don't need. So that's all the code we have, or at least the new code that we have. So here we have on Polyline, on polygon click. Actually, I don't need the on polygon, I need it on polyline. So I made a mistake in here. So on polyline click listener, and that's the function that we need. So implement member on Polyline ClickListener. So here. And this is also on Polyline ClickListener. So here I'm going to say, let's rename this guy to Polyline. And what I want to do is this. I'm simply going to go ahead and say, this is just for the purpose of demonstration. So I'm going to say, if we tapped on it, let's say we change the color of it to red. So Polyline dot color becomes color dot red. There are so many other things you can do. You can, for instance, change the pattern of it. You can make it look like a different pattern. You can change the width of it. You can do all sorts of different adjustments on it. So let's go ahead and rerun the application now. And now it's going to show us a polyline, which is by default blue. And let me zoom into here and like that. And if I click on this blue, it becomes red, which is basically our Polyline listener. Now, before we close this lesson, I want to show you one final thing, which is beyond polylines, you can also add polygons. And polygons, they have so many different shapes. One of them is a circle. So let me show you how we could actually add a circle in here. So I'm going to get myself a little bit of a space in here. I'm going to go ahead and say my map dot add circle. And when you add circle, it obviously is asking you for circle options, which is very simple. So circle options, you instantiate it, then you say the center. It says, where do you want to put it? Let's say I want to put it in one of these locations. I want to put it at mid. So that is the location where I want to put it. Then it says, what's the radius for it, which is the radius in meters. So I'm going to say the radius of it, let's say 2000 meters. So that's my radius for it. Then is actually, this is actually a double, so 2000. And then it's asking me, you could set things such as the color for the stroke, the color for the fill. You can change the stroke width. So I'm going to do actually all of those. Let me get myself a little bit of a better formatting in here. So that, then I'm going to say stroke width, and the width of it, let's say, is only 4. Then is gonna be fill color, for instance. I'm gonna say the color of it, I want it to be somehow transparent. So let's get a color.rgba, and the RGBA, I'm gonna say the alpha for it is lower, say 0.2, and then all of the RG and B are all full colors, so white basically. So 1, 1, and 1. And then I could actually add the stroke color, for instance. So stroke color, which let's just give it black, for instance. In this case, I'm gonna say color dot black. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm gonna do in here. You could change many other things, but I think that's more than enough for now. I'm gonna run the application, and this time around, not only we're gonna see the polyline, we're also gonna see a circle somewhere in here, which is, you know, exactly what we intended to have. I don't know if that color is actually showing in the fill. Maybe I change that color to 0.6. This is a very good, you know, way of showing things on the map, for instance, such as frequency. If you're developing an application that is looking for a certain number of people or certain number of events on different parts of the map, then you can look at the number of those events and then change the size of the circle, or maybe the color of the circle. Wherever things are happening more frequently, you could become red, other places could become yellow, so on and so forth. So that's pretty much all about it. We went through several different applications in this section, and yeah, let's keep it up to here.